Yeah, it's when in burnout particularly you're overriding yourself. And what that means is pushing past personal limits. Those limits can be physical, emotional, mental, even spiritual. And so when you do that, what you're doing is you're dismissing, you're ignoring, and you're really pushing away those truths inside of yourself, those values, that vision, what really lights you up. And you do that so that you can perform expectations or meet demands from
Mhm.
the external world. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to practice how to listen to that signal and how to respond to it so that you have another tool in your toolbox to respond to overwhelm, stress, and burnout.
All right. Well, welcome all to this edition of Experimenter's Mindset. I am very excited for our conversation today. It's building off a little bit based on our previous conversation around managing long COVID symptoms. Today, we're going to be talking about burnout, what it is, how to identify it, strategies for tackling that. And as part of this, I wanted to do the same thing that I did last time and just give a little bit of a disclaimer. So, neither of us here are licensed medical professionals. This content is really for your education, your benefit. It's material that is not intended to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any physical, mental, or emotional issues that you might have. If you are experiencing challenges that you feel that, hey, you're at your limit and you need help, then please contact a licensed medical professional, build a support system, anybody you can to make sure that you are healthy and happy and safe. So with that, just a quick lead in into what we're going to be covering today. So as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a mix of both knowledge sharing as well as some micro practices. It's the end of the week, or for the most part, it's the end of the week for people, and I'm sure that you've had a lot going on. So we're gonna do a little bit of grounding exercises to get started. Before all of that, I wanted to introduce my multiple years. We've been colleagues and friends now. Charlie Gibson. He is an executive depth coach. He has been doing coaching and a lot of Buddhist practices over number of years. And I am really excited to have him on to be talking about burnout. Charlie, I'll let you introduce yourself and your experience real quick before we get started.
Sure. Thanks, AJ. And thanks everyone for showing. I really appreciate investing your time tonight. Tonight's meant to be really engaging, interactive, and I really hope you walk away with a few value points tonight. Just a little bit about myself. I spent over 20 years leading teams in the tech industry, including the last 8 to 10 managing and leading in executive positions. I'm back at building in the tech world. Love it. And today I also coach high achieving leaders through deep transformative work. And it's really a blend of Jungian psychology, social neuroscience, and the Eastern traditions out there. And I lean more into the Buddhist tradition. I was ordained as a lay Buddhist teacher last year after about 20 years of practice and study. So I kind of leaned into that as well as others. But overall, as a depth coach, I work with high achieving leaders and managers who feel stuck or disconnected, even when everything looks great on the outside. And what I do is I help my clients realign with their purpose so that they can lead with greater authenticity, confidence, and creative impact. And really, that's exactly what we're here to explore tonight, because burnout isn't just about workload. At its core, it's about disconnection from ourselves, our values, and what truly gives us energy. So thanks, AJ.
I love that. I love what you
Yeah.
said about, even though on the outside, everything can appear like it's going great, on the inside, you can be struggling. And that's part of why we did this in this type of webinar style where we don't have other people on camera, because we want people to feel that they can ask questions, they can participate, and they don't have to worry about exposing themselves. right?
Yeah.
And we would love that. If you want to engage in the comments, ask questions, we'll be monitoring that as we go through. So to get started, you had mentioned doing a little bit of a micro practice to help us get grounded after the crazy week that I'm sure many of us has had.
Yeah, love to. So real quick, a micro practice. These are practices I developed. They're less than 3 minutes. They're for busy managers and executives who otherwise just like don't have time to meditate, don't have time to do yoga, don't have time to do this or that. So these are really quick practices that we do to help ground ourselves, center ourselves. And then this one is just about 45 to 60 seconds. What I want you to do, if you'd like, it's going to be a breathing exercise. And when I say the phrase breathing in, I want you to gulp of fresh air in through your mouth and hold it until I say the phrase breathing out. Okay, we're going to do that 4 times. And so if you're comfortable, close your eyes. If you're not, you can just look and gaze. And so we're going to start right now and just breathe along and notice what happens. First one, breathing in. I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out. I know I'm breathing out. Breathing in. I calm myself. Breathing out. I feel at ease. Breathing in. I smile to myself. Breathing out. I release negative energy, negative thoughts. Breathing in. I arrive in this moment. Breathing out. I see it's a beautiful moment. That's it. And this is really the power of presence, and it's always available to you. And this is the kind of stillness what brings us back to ourselves. So just like that, AJ, we've returned to ourselves.
I love that. I think I'm going to start beginning all of my webcasts with that exercise. Really helpful. So let's get into burnout. Everybody, I am sure, has heard about burnout, has been seeing more and more TikToks about burnout. I mean, let's face it, the past 5 years have been challenging. It continues to get become more challenging. And, you know, something that I love to start with is let's level set on what we mean by burnout today, what we're defining burnout, or even how it's actually defined, because there's a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of different content out there. So let's start there and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So the World Health Organization does have an official definition for burnout that they established in May of 2019. A lot of people refer to that. I'll give you a little bit different angle on it. So what is burnout exactly? Love the question, because it's more than workload and more than exhaustion, although it does comprise those units too, or those items. But really, burnout's a sign that you drifted too far from your inner truth. It arises when we overneed the needs of the body. You know, when you silence your emotions, when you lose touch with your deeper self. Burnout's really a call to alignment, a realignment, to reclaim your energy and to return to wholeness. So that's how I define burnout.
Interesting. Okay. And then, you know, as you're saying, you're moving away from alignment from your inner truth. Talk a little bit about what that means. What's my inner truth?
Yeah, that's great. So the inner truth is really yourself. And when I say self, I mean self with a capital S. So it's not your job title. It's not the roles that you play in life. It is that deeper inner wisdom within you. It's where you house your vision, your values, your creativity, your sense of meaning. And that's what I mean by that. And that's your inner truth. And oftentimes during periods of burnout, we disconnect from that inner truth. And so even if things look all right on the outside, we're kind of performing. Things don't feel right. We're not really understanding why. It's because there's a disconnection and erosion from our inner truth, from our inner self.
Mm-hmm. So it's more than just, oh, I'm going through the motions type of feeling. It's I'm doing this thing and it just does not align with me, with that self with the capital S that you just said.
Yeah, it's when in burnout, particularly, you're overriding yourself, and what that means is you're pushing past personal limits. Those limits can be physical, emotional, mental, even spiritual. And so when you do that, what you're doing is you're dismissing, you're ignoring, and you're really pushing away those truths inside of yourself, those values, that vision, what really lights you up. And you do that so that you can perform expectations or meet demands from the external world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's
Yeah,
going
and
on.
that when you say expectations, that could be simultaneously internal and external, because we can put our own internal expectations that also don't align with our
Yeah.
self.
Yeah, no, great question. It could be both. It's the expectations that you perceive that others expect of you, that role that you play, that role that your ego tells you to play. It's also the external expectations from your family, your culture, your work, manager. It's all of that.
Yeah. And you had a reflection prompt that you wanted to share.
Yeah. So if any of this resonates with you, and if you've ever felt that gap between what the world sees and how you feel inside, trust me, you're not alone. That moment's a signal for you. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to practice how to listen to that signal and how to respond to it so that you have another tool in your toolbox to respond to overwhelm, stress, and burnout. And so I'd like everyone to do is, if you can, drop in the chat. What's your biggest energy drain at work right now? Love to hear from you.
I'll add mine as well.
Nice.
And we talked about that earlier
Yeah.
as we were preparing for the conversation.
Yeah.
We are our own critics. Perfectionism is a big one.
Perfectionism is a big one. People pleasing, any people pleasers out there? Any micromanagers? Does that drain you?
Well, that's great. Feel free to add into the chat, as I said. So we've gone a bit about what burnout is, its formal definition. How about getting into some of the roots? So you named a couple things, right? Expectations that are being placed upon you, micromanagement, more and more. So, let's get into some of those stress points, right? What are the different ones? And also, one of the things that we've talked about, and I would love to differentiate here and talk about the acute stress versus chronic stress, right? I'm stressed today versus I've been stressed for 5 years, right? So let's talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, no, let's start with that because that's a great question. I love it. So, and just to be clear, while I'm not a licensed therapist, I can certainly talk to this from a coaching and nervous system perspective. And so when we think about acute stress, that's short-term stress. It's your body's response to a challenge. Like you might have a tight deadline, high stakes conversation, high stakes presentation. So your stress is going to spike, but it usually resolves once the moment passes. So that would be considered acute stress. The challenge we have in today's world is there's a lot of acute stress from responding to Slack messages, going to meetings, maybe tight deadlines. So acute stress can be damaging over the long term if we don't give ourselves time to rest, to repair, to reflect. But that's acute stress. When we think about chronic stress, it's that state of tension that never really turns off. It continues to go. It's that constant sense of pressure, vigilance. I'm smiling because I'm thinking of my German Shepherd, but vigilance, low-grade anxiety, and it builds up over time. And especially when we override those inner signals we were talking about, like that means when you're pushing through exhaustion, one more email, or, yeah, I'll go to that meeting, even though you don't really feel like it or you don't think you're needed, but you go because you want to be a team player, pushing through that exhaustion, or you're disconnecting from what really actually fuels us. So in the coaching that I do with my clients, we really focus on chronic stress and how it disconnects us from our values, our body, and ourself, that true self we talked about. Because that disconnection, that's what opens the door to burnout. So that's acute stress. But burnout in general, it just stems from prolonged stress, and emotional suppression, and your values misalignment. Again, that's where your inner values, what you really value, your visions, your creativity do not match your outer actions. So, yeah.
And I think you had a very interesting graph to kind of showcase the stress when you're going good and bad, because before we show that, I think isn't it true that some amount of stress is good? Right? There is a certain level that you're pushing. This is how I like to think about it. There is a point when I'm experiencing flow, when I'm doing the things that I love, that I'm pushing myself to the limit of what I have experienced before to become better. It's like building a muscle, right? You're doing something and you're forging a new path or forging new ground, which is very different than when I think about, hey, I am stressed and I'm not aligned with this role. And I've had jobs like that where I'm completely not aligned with the role and don't know or understand how I'm going to meet the expectations. And now I'm trying to push to something that this isn't aligned at all.
Yeah, that beautifully put. Wait, AJ, can you pull up the? There you go. Yeah, and let's nerd out for a moment. So, what you see in front of you, this is a Yerkes-Dodson model. It was published in 1908 in the Journal of Neurology and Psychology, and it's done so by two psychologists, Yerkes and Dodson. And what it's meant to show is really the optimal period of moderate stress to peak performance. That's that optimal zone. So it shows the relationship of stress to activities essentially on the curve. And it does show stress is a data point. It's information. It's your system's way of telling you something important, right? But what I like about this curve, it shows us what many of us already intuitively know. We thrive when the challenge meets meaning, right? But what makes this optimal zone that you see in the middle, it's not just about performance, it's about alignment. And this is kind of where I'm coming from. Alignment with what? Alignment with your inner self or your true self. Because when your outer efforts, like those efforts you were talking about, when they're in sync with our inner truth, we feel energized, we feel authentic, right? We feel creative. The burnout begins when we override that feedback, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. You're overriding your feedback, meeting the expectations and demands of the external world or how you think the external world wants to be seen by you or interact with you. And that's what we're receiving. So when we push past fatigue, again, silence our emotions or ignore those signals from your body or your inner self, that's where burnout can occur. But stress can be a guide if you're willing to pause and listen. So that's kind of the point I wanted to bring on there. Yeah.
And that optimal point isn't some universal destination that's the same for everybody, right? That's something that each of us has our own unique background and experiences and inner self, inner truth. That's something you have to figure out. What is your level of optimal, right?
Yeah, exactly. This model's not a one size fits all. I mean, that optimal zone is not a fixed point. It's a personal dynamic and it's really deeply contextual. What I mean by that is, what stretches and excites one person really might overwhelm or bore someone else. And that can change also depending upon the season of your life, your energy, your values. If you're having a child, it's going to change some things. If you're moving. So it's really how you connect and feel to your deeper why. That's why what I often say, the goal isn't to push harder and be more productive necessarily, it's to listen better and be aligned with yourself. And that's really the real work. It's learning to recognize when you're aligned with yourself. Again, that capital S, that deeper part of you that knows what matters. And then to know when you've drifted into performance or a disconnect from yourself. So yeah, it's not a universal formula. It's just a conversation between your outer demands and your inner truth. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The way that you described it makes me think of the Ikagi? Is that what it is? Where everything aligns together and you find that like center of this is your path.
Yeah. But just recognize that path can change for you, right? Depending upon where you're in your life and the demands and your values change and preferences change over time. But yeah, there's something like that. Yeah. But there's
love
a,
it.
go ahead.
Go on.
No, I was going to say, I just wanted to go into another topic here, or kind of a related but different topic, because if you see the graph there, and it's that we had a previously, you don't have to bring it back up, but on the left-hand side there's a real twist where it says bore out. That's the twist, because there's a lot of people who think they're burned out. They're actually experiencing bore out. And bore out was coined, I think it was back in 2009 by two Swiss business consultants. And really bore out, from my view, involves a slow erosion of motivation and meaning. It really reflects a disconnection from it, energizes us. So when we're in bore out, you're under challenge, you're understimulated, your work feels empty, because you're not doing what matters or what lights you up. That's why. So an important thing here is that when that's left unchecked, the emptiness will drain you through lack of purpose or creative engagement. So that's kind of wanted to point out there.
That's great. I love that you brought that up, because I have also experienced that. And, sometimes it's like whiplash, right? You can go from burnout to bore out almost out of your control. If there's a reorganization, something happens at work, your life changes a little bit, and all of a sudden there's such a disparity between last week versus this week. It's a little too short of a time frame, but things are moving really fast. I also wanted to bring up, we got a lot of different comments now from the previous question around some of the things that people are facing as challenges. Perfectionism and overthinking, something that seems to come up multiple times. Never being quiet and unreachable due to technology. Oh, so yeah, now this expectation that you are always available, right? And I mean, here, my phone is right here. Like, I put it on airplane mode so I finally wouldn't get any messages, but it was available. Overwhelmed, too much work, feeling anxious and missing deadlines. So some of those external pressures on you. Let's see, going past the strain and leading into sustained fight or flight. This is what you were also talking about, that chronic stress that now you're always, how did you put it, vigilant and on edge and just ready to react, I think is one way. And then we have one question. How do you factor the situational element that an individual might be going through, new job, company, personal issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's again, that's really highly contextual. I'll give a generic answer, but it's again highly contextual to the individual. But though, when you go into a new job, you just got married, moved to a new town, have personal issues you're wading through, those are typically can be chronic stress, and your behavior and your actions can be driven by external projections. And what I mean by that is, as you go through that, what you see in others may be actually an unconscious conditioning, behaviors, beliefs, activities that you've pushed away or rejected or dismissed because they don't fit your current persona. So it's really important as you're going through these new situations to make sure that you're aligned with your purpose. You understand what your purpose is. You understand what your values are. You understand what your bigger vision is. Those will be anchors for you to help guide you through those new situations on there. But there may, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, I think later in the call tonight, if we can make the time for it, because I got some great examples, I think that will tie into that question. So I can give some examples that might answer that question more fully.
Yeah, so we'll put a pin on that. We'll come back to it because I know that we have it in our conversation. And, to close out where we're talking about with really understanding some of the hidden roots, another thing that you and I had gone around is part of it is understanding, hey, here are the signs and symptoms, here are the roots. And the other one is being able to identify them when they occur. And something you talked about was journaling playing a role.
Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, almost right. Yeah, so typically what I do with my clients is, because journal seems to be very popular these days, has been for, I've noticed a couple of years, there's gratitude journals, so if you're keeping a current journal, you can just add this in. But if not, keep a stress reflection journal. And what you do with that, just write down and log the pressure points so you become aware of the sources of stress that can lead to burnout. So this would be potentially helpful if you're switching your jobs, or if you're just got married, you're in a new situation, dealing with personal issues. It's really useful to ask yourself some deeper questions like, where am I on this Dodson or Yerkes-Dodson curve today? Am I in alignment with myself? And I think more important, just as important, what am I not listening to? Right. So those are some things that folks find helpful. And then as we go through the coaching, the clients they'll sometimes bring those journal entries in, and we can look at that more deeply and contextualize it and help them through their journey.
I am a big fan of journaling. I didn't believe in it before because I think I didn't understand it well, right? I thought it was just writing thoughts in, and I didn't really take it seriously. But then once I understood more about intentionality and reflecting and what I could do with it, I think it's become a much bigger part in my day-to-day life. I mean, I don't do it every day, but I do try to recognize that, hey, I am ruminating off of something, or something is wrong. Let me go back and write this out so that it helps me to reflect.
Yeah. Journal is a really powerful way for people to get in touch with themselves, to write their thoughts down, and just to, express their emotions. So it's a powerful tool. Yeah. When we do this, I'd like to go over, can you cue up the slides again? Because I want to go through some of the common causes of burnout too, because I tell you, man, in this fast-paced world that we all, or many of us work in, and high-stress environments, especially one that includes emerging tech like AI, burnout is often caused by a lot of different things. And let's see, I'll go to the next slide here. There we go. Thank you.
There we go.
It's caused by a lot of different things. We won't go through every single one of these today, but some of the common things are like the unrelenting pressure to deliver and scale, lack of psychological safety or autonomy. And when we talk about lack of psychological safety, what I mean by that is really following Amy Edmondson's definition. She's a psychologist at Harvard, and she kind of coined the term. What psychological safety is where in a group and with your manager, you feel like there's trust, mutual trust. You can be yourself, meaning you can say things like, I don't understand how this works. Can you help me? I'm not having such a good day today. I can take a risk. So that's what we mean by psychological safety in general. But also some other causes of disconnection from meaningful outcomes, or that context switching, right? The constant cognitive context switching, decision fatigue. And the last one here, one is I found come up more and more is a lack of community, where people feel like they don't have that one person at work they can really trust and confide in. They might feel isolated. They're looking for community, actually. So it's not always just one person, but just a group of people that they can trust and confide in. And that's either inside of work, outside of work. And that can also lead to burnout because you keep it all inside, you keep it bottled up. So these are some of the causes. Also perfectionism, your mindset. And if you don't keep that in check, that's going to potentially contribute to burnout. Rumination, so those, if you're inflexible. So some of those things can be contributors to burnout as well.
Yeah. The community is such a big one.
Yeah.
For me, it is such a big focus, and I struggle to wrap my head. I mean, I understand why, but it is painful for me to see this movement of don't be friends with your coworkers. Don't socialize with them. And your work is such a big part of your life. If you don't like the people that you work with, if you're not friends, if you don't have a community there, I guess it depends on where community lies in yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody could be different. Everybody could be different.
I do believe it's important to have at least one person with whom you can trust and confide with at work, someone who really gets the nuances and the context in which you work. Do you think that's important? It doesn't mean you have to go have brunch once a month, or go to each other's baby showers and whatnot necessarily, but just someone you can confide in, you can trust, a buddy. And then beyond that, finding community with others where you can connect, collaborate, create, find support, disconnect from stressors, the acute and chronic stressors that we talked about that can plague a person in the work environment today, I think is also real important. But that's going to depend upon the individual. For some, that means getting really involved in a church, a mosque, or synagogue, a religious community. For others, that's getting more civically involved, volunteering. For others, yet it may be, going to Joann's and buying the scrapbook materials. It means different things to different people. But
so in your experience, there's, what do we have here? 7, 8 things. Is there some that are more common or bigger contributors to burnout, or do you see that it really depends on the individual?
A couple trends have been seen over the last year, and it depends on someone, gender, age, and role, work role that someone plays. Gen Z, Lord, they off the charts burnout. In fact, it's documented. I got it here. Let me check the note card. It's according to a study that just came out 2 months ago by Model, 86% of the Gen Zers in the workplace are burnt out. Right? With baby boomers, it's like 54%, but Gen Z by far is experiencing burnout. Loneliness, isolation, in particular with anyone at VP level or above, C-level in particular. Those are causes. And then for those of us who might be middle managers, it's that work overload, too much to do, not enough time to do it, and you're not getting support. In fact, they just cut so-and-so out of the next apartment. I don't have anyone to work with anymore. And then at the staff level, it's sometimes a conflict of values, or that the other big one's not having a voice, right? It's just like that what it says doesn't matter. I'm just a cog in the wheel, and that can lead to burnout. Because that's that emotional suppression that will come. So, and then for women in particular in the workplace, there's a lot of masking. I've seen where there's a role that you need, and that can actually lead to bore out more than burnout, because you're disconnecting from your inner self, because you feel like you need to meet certain expectations and certain demands. Otherwise, you just don't get a seat at the table. It's the same true with people of color that I found. So there are a little bit of stereotyping there. It's not true for everyone, but in general, those are some of the key themes that I've seen over the last year.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that, there are some internal factors at play that you can control, but then there's also external factors in play that you need to learn how to manage or recognize. And that kind of goes back to the intentionality and the journaling and being able to identify when you are exhibiting signs of burnout, right? I think part of what we had talked about before is that it can be very tricky to identify burnout.
Yes, and I'm sorry, Jim. Looking at the comments, some really great comments here. I'm just gonna pause here. It's I'll come back to it. So one comment here around working from home makes it a challenge to have community. Absolutely. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's coming out more and more, this isolation, this loneliness. You see, and I'm seeing it more with, like I said, a VP and C-level, but also absolutely with working individuals, regardless of role or title. If you're working remotely, it can be a cause of burnout there too. And working manager shouldn't be a thing. Yep. Alas, unfortunately, it is a thing, at least in my experience. But totally agree. So we're going back here. So burnout can, it's tricky to identify because it can also be driven by what we carry unconsciously, as I was alluding to earlier. So I'll be a little bit more direct about it now. There's these hidden beliefs about success or worth or identity that push us beyond what's sustainable. So it'll kind of sneak up on us. And it's because, especially in like the fast-paced, high-pressure environments that many folks work in today, there's part of you that can sideline, like your creativity, your joy, your voice, because you're so focused on the company goals, you're focused on just keeping up, or you're focused on showing that you are worth it, that you've earned a seat at the table, or to define success as you think it should be defined. So it'll just kind of sneak up on there. And a lot of it is unconscious behaviors that you don't acknowledge because you're not aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The earn the seat at the table, really interesting because it feeds into things like imposter syndrome and a lot of fear, and it kind of picks at self-confidence, and it can just erode your ability to show up. And I kind of come back to that because it's interesting, because of all the places I've been where, you know, you have competitive, high performing people getting into an environment, one thing that is just consistent on all of them is that at some point, somebody who has more experience, who's been in that environment for longer, has sat down with the new joiners and said, congratulations, you made it. Nobody's taking that away. You are here, you belong here. So now let's get to work. Right? And then reassurance that, you know, you deserve to be at the table.
And again, unfortunately for many people, what happens is, even though you hear it externally and you get that validation, there's those quiet beliefs that we carry around ourselves about what makes us valuable. And so there's these hidden drivers like perfectionism, people pleasing, over responsibility, which really means focusing on taking care of others before you take care of yourself, which is a little bit different than people pleasing, but it's almost like parentifying in a way. And when you don't acknowledge them, then those drivers are going to run the show and you'll start to burn out silently. And what will happen is things will also come into play, such as confidence issues or imposter syndrome, or you start to feel like, I'm not good enough to belong here. God, look at what they're doing over there. You start comparing yourself. It's those hidden drivers that are taking root. And again, it sneaks up on you because you're unconscious about them, because you've carried with them most of your life.
Yeah. And I think that brings us into our next micro practice that we have on the alignment pulse check.
Oh yeah, I love this one. Yeah, micro practice too, the alignment pulse check. Yeah. So what I'd like everyone to do is think back to a time when you first entered your current field or your current role. What lit you up about that work? What really got you going? What excited you? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're comfortable, I'd love this 1 being 10, fully aligned. How aligned do you feel with that purpose today? So again, on a scale of 1 to 10, how aligned are you with your role today as you were when you first started that role or field? 1 being, oh God, I don't know how I even picked this role or field. And 10 being, yeah, totally. It's been my dream job. So I know since I was a kid, I wanted to be this thing or in this field. I'd love to hear what folks say and see how aligned you feel with that purpose today.
Yeah, so maybe drop it in the chat.
Yeah, just give it a second or two here. A couple here.
5, 8. Ooh, it's
Okay.
good.
Right on. 8 is good. It's high. 10's. Well, what did I say about it? Huh?
Could I put 6 to 10? It depends on the day.
No. Pick a number.
Oh no. Okay.
Whatever happened. You got to commit. Whatever you're feeling now. And there's no wrong answer. It's just whatever you're feeling now. You know, the number may change, I guess. But what I wanted to say about this, you know, kind of the comment on this and why I think it's kind of really quick, but can be a powerful reflection for you later on as you think about, like, why did I pick that number? It's because when your current role no longer aligns with what originally lit you up, it doesn't always show up as stress or exhaustion. That's kind of the point here. It sometimes shows up with boredom, numbness, you're emotionally flat. Feel like you're just going through the emotions. And again, that's really more bore out versus burnout. And it's kind of the quieter cousin of burnout, actually. And it's really about being disconnected from what gives you meaning. You know, so this check-in is just one way to catch it early before that spark fully dims. You want to catch it early. And AJ, if I do, if it's all right with you, just because I've talked both about burnout and bore out quite a bit and kind of mix. I just wanted to go through a really quick summary, folks, so could just understand the differences
great.
here. But just really high level, the energy drain for burnout is really from doing too much. You're, overstretching yourself perhaps. And the root cause might be like you're overloaded, high pressure, might be emotional suppression. Kind of the typical bumper sticker phrase or feeling is just can't do this anymore. And kind of that core external projection is going to be really, it's tying into those hidden drivers around over-identification with productivity, with success, how you show up. And then when we think about bore out, the energy drain there is really around from doing too little that's meaningful for you. And the root cause is really around lack of challenge. Boredom too. And really avoid a purpose. You're not really sure what your purpose is. You haven't really thought about it. And so your typical feeling might be something along the lines of, it doesn't really matter. None of this matters, Why should I say anything? And kind of the core external projection there is disconnection from your personal agency, disconnecting from meaning and motivation over time because you're disconnecting from your personal agency. And just if you're wondering, like, well, how can I tell the difference, right? Couple of prompts that I give to clients is you want to ask yourself, or under inspired, am I stretched too thin or just going through the motions? But really, the label doesn't matter so much actually, because here's the thing, both burnout and bore out reflect a loss of alignment with the self. The burnout's just really when you override the self and you're pushing past those personal limits we talked about. And bore out is really when you're neglecting yourself, when your creative energy stagnates and deeper needs like your purpose and growth, self-expression go unmet because you're meeting external demands or expectations. So the key insight I really want folks to walk away with tonight, or one of them is, and just remember, burnout will shout, bore out whispers. But both are asking the same thing. Where did I lose connection to what matters most? That's the key, right? So it doesn't, the burnout, bore out, you just get down to the core question there.
That's great. And that goes right into the next section that we talked about, which is, okay, so we talked about what it is. We talked about the root causes and what do we do with this information? Right? So now we know it, we've identified it. How do we start to tackle it?
Yeah, great question. So a couple of points I'd like to make here to everybody is, first of all, this is where I invite people to shift from managing burnout to relating to it differently. And this is kind of what we've been planting all along. So once that you've recognized these signs, like you said, Jay, really another question becomes is how do we stop overriding ourselves or neglecting ourselves and start listening to ourselves again? And you probably heard things or advice, especially if you're going social media, like, hey, just take a break, use a Pomodoro method or practice gratitude.
I have my Pomodoro timer right here.
Yeah. If that alone worked to help, manage or help you mitigate burnout or bore out, we wouldn't be seeing the rates rising year after year as we have been. So my view, what's missing is depth, presence, and inner realignment. That's really what it is. And so the question becomes, what does it look like to come back to ourselves, to stop the burnout spiral and reconnect with our deeper values, what truly matters to us? And I've got a framework I've developed over the past year and seeing my clients. So this is all, it was iterated based on clients and continues to get iterated. So you're just going to be seeing the latest version tonight. And it's called Pause, Presence, and Practice. And it's a depth-based framework. It's rooted in the Jungian psychology, social neuroscience, and some of that Eastern wisdom tradition that I was talking about earlier. And what it does, it really guides you to reconnect with your inner compass, to realign what matters most, and to take small value-aligned steps so that you can really be grounded in your inner wisdom with purpose and creative power, right? And maybe we could do is show the slide, AJ, if you can.
I have
there
it
we go.
queued up.
Yeah, I'd like to walk through it. And by the way, there's just one framework. at the end of the day, if any framework or strategy or tip that someone gives you doesn't align with you and doesn't really feel right, then don't use it. But this is one that I suggest and I use with my clients. They've given input to it. And so when you look at the first one, we want to look at pause first. And this is really where you recognize your burnout signals or triggers like fatigue, emotional flatness, behaviors that are unconscious behaviors that may be driving you that you're not aware of, but you can be made aware with coaching. The way you want to do here when you pause is you want to ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me right now? Right? Where am I feeling tension? And really how you want to think about pause is this is a moment where you become aware that something feels off, kind of recognizing like, things aren't quite right. Either it's stretched too thin, you're emotionally distant, or you feel like you're going through the emotions. Quick story for everybody on this, because this really comes to mind every time I talk about this framework. I had a client of mine, and she came to me saying she wasn't sure she's burned out or not. Because she's doing really well at work. She's getting top marks. She's showing up to the meetings, hitting the deadlines, hitting all her numbers, but she felt numb. And like she told me, like every morning when I get up, my jaw gets really tight and my stomach gets in knots before I even open my laptop. But she just said, hey, push through it. She powered through the day. It's like, what's going on? And in our work together, what I realized is that she was overriding all these physical signals, thinking that they were normal. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. That's what burnout does. It like makes that consistent strain feel like the new normal, like it's just okay. But it's so this step, the pause, is about reclaiming that moment. It's about slowing down long enough to ask, what I've been pushing past in order to keep performing. So that's the pause. The next one in the framework here is presence. And this is where you come back to your body, your breath, and the present moment. You tune into what's being felt, right? Because it really is I believe, a mind, body, and true self or soul connection here. And so this is where you ask yourself, what story am I in? What value am I ignoring or dismissing? And so this step is really about making space for what's ever showing up, whether it be grief, exhaustion, worry, resentment. And don't try to fix it or run away from it. Right? Just you welcome it in, see what you can learn from it. On this one, there's another really quick story about another client. And this one, she realized that she just wasn't tired. She's like completely disconnected from work. And it was carrying over into her life where she felt like she wasn't even present with her children or her husband. And she felt like a ghost in her own life is what she told me. And so when we did slow down together and gather some presence through this framework, she told me like, I don't feel like myself anymore. I didn't even know when that started. How did I get here? So that's I really like that, because that reminds us that present means turning toward what's true right now, even if it's uncomfortable, those hard truths. So you're not trying to meditate it away. You're not reframe it with, toxic positivity, but you allow it in, you welcome it in. Mm-hmm. And that's what gives it a chance to move and help you move through the burnout or bore out that you might be going through. So, and the last one I'd like to go through here is practice. And that's where you take a small values-aligned action to reconnect with what matters to you. So that values-aligned action, this action that aligns with your values. Right? And so you ask yourself, what next action feels true to who I really am? And this is really about aligned action, about choosing that small step that honors what you're feeling and who you truly are. And so as you practice this, and it can take some time, it's not something you do in an afternoon, but as you practice this over time, you can find yourself mitigating burnout and bore out, and you'll find some doors opening up for you. You'll find some insights about what really matters to you, and really how the boundaries you want to set with others and with your life. And you go around figuring out how you can do that best. It's just a really good tool for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you mentioned discomfort, and as humans, we are wired to avoid discomfort, right? And I think that this is where, as we we're talking about earlier, having a community, having somebody that you can trust, having an external party help you to push you into discomfort the right way, right? The right discomfort to face hard truths that you might not want to, really dig into, or it might be unconscious. You might not recognize it.
Yeah, there's a story I'd love to share with you around that I really like. Actually, there's a few I could share, but but one I want to share is with a senior engineer at a large computer company, not the one I currently work at, but another one, and at a tech company. I say computer company. Um, but this person, he became really sharply critical of a younger team member on the team as a junior engineer. And he got really critical of him because this junior engineer would come in during the stand-ups and afterwards just like question established processes during the meeting. And just like, hey, what about this? What about that? Oh, I think it'd be better if we do this. How about if we simplify this? And my client, the senior engineer leader, just got sharply critical. I'm like upset about it. And he talking, he's like, dude, this guy's disrespectful, disrespects structural organization. And what we found through the coaching is that the leader wasn't just reacting to the behavior, he was reacting to the part of himself that once valued innovation, risk-taking, or questioning norms. He had to suppress it to rise through a system that rewarded conformity and control. And so that unclaimed drive, that disruption, got projected as irritation about, hey, we got to be reckless. Again, it doesn't reflect structure. And in this case, the leader was really projecting their disowned creative edge onto the team member, reacting with criticism instead of curiosity. So, and that was hidden. He was unconscious about that. He didn't realize that, and it took some work. But that's just but one story.
I have a personal reflection to that as well. There's a exercise that you learn in improv as you're getting started in improv, and it's pushing yourself to look at the world through the eyes of a child, right? And the whole purpose of this is to try to peel back all of that. I'm going to call it forced conformity, right? Because you were just saying like this being pushed to conform to a system, and you have to peel that back and pretend that you're a child and look at the world. And the way that we did the exercise, we were assigned to go out during the week every day and walk around and announce the things that you saw. Say, wow, a stop sign. Wow, a, this, that, all the other things. And what I noticed at the end of the week, first of all, I enjoyed a lot more things. Second, I found that there was a jazz club a block from my apartment that somehow I had never seen. Right? I went to a museum. It was the Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. And I was doing it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. And then there was a kid in front of me who was being a kid. And he was like, wow, this lizard. Wow, this snake. Says I came in feeling like I was faking it, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, a snake. I'm like, wait a minute. That's actually cool. And I connected with that. And yeah, I want to go back to what you were saying. Like, we learn certain behaviors to adapt to our environment or is pushed onto us, and peeling that back is so important.
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely is. And it sounds like it was a really good experience for you. And it's these kind of practices that can really get us in touch with what truly matters. And you start noticing things that you haven't noticed before because you're living in that present moment, which is so important. So, yeah.
So I would love to recap a little bit. We're coming to the top of the hour. So we talked about, burnout being feedback to something that's essentially out of alignment. And one thing that I think that we didn't so much mention overtly, but is worth saying, is you can work on burnout, but you can't work through burnout. Right? You mentioned that. It's like people are burned out and they keep working and they get more burned out. And I think that's something that about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really pushing past your personal limits so that you can meet expectations or demands of others. So it's as you're burning out, you just will get more and more depleted, exhausted. If you ignore those body signals, if you ignore the signals that your mind, your body, and your true self are sharing with you. So if you force it, you're just going to go down a road of further disconnection and essentially unhappiness, and wonder what's going on here. And you may actually also experience bore out and burnout at the same time, which is possible. You might have some overlap there, quite a bit of overlap that makes. So where you feel unfulfilled, but also stretched too thin and exhausted. So there's yeah. So you pushing through is not, and just powering through is not recommended.
Yeah. So you had some reflection prompts as well around acts of presence. And at the same time, I want to invite our viewers to ask questions in the comment. We'll turn the last few minutes into a bit of a discussion. And then I have a couple more questions I would love to ask you.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So the reflection prompt that you had sent over before was, what's one small act of presence you're taking with you from this conversation?
Yep.
So sharing something that you all are taking away from the conversation would be great. And then while people are writing comments, we touched a little bit on the fact that there are so many other frameworks, approaches, strategies. It seems like everybody has something to tell you. Do Pomodoro, take a break, things like that. How do you navigate through all of that?
That's a really powerful question, because as you pointed out, I mean, we're swimming in a sea of advice, but I think we're really starving for wisdom here. And I think the key with any of these strategies or frameworks or tips is ask yourself, which one supports the life and leadership I want to live? That's the question you want to ask yourself. The thing is that most high achievers I work with, at least, are so outwardly driven that they haven't really paused to ask, what am I optimizing for? So they'll try all these different frameworks without really asking themselves which one supports life and leadership they want to live without aligning with their purpose. So they make it a little frustrated, like, this doesn't work. So the important thing, at least with the clients I work with, is we want to start by slowing down and listen inwardly, right? And as we go through that and slow down, you discover together, if an approach doesn't work for the client, it doesn't honor their values, their energy rhythms, or their deeper sense of meaning, then it's going to feel performative. And so no matter how evidence-based it is, right? So you don't use it. And the goal here is really to choose a strategy and approach that helps you stay rooted in your authenticity, your creativity, and your purpose. That's the thing. And then it could take some work, a little trial and error, but if you're, again, really rooted into your inner self, then you could pick up on those right away. So that's how I think about it.
That's something we should be aware of. Not everything will work for everyone.
Right.
And be comfortable experimenting, but also saying no. If it doesn't feel good, it doesn't work, be intentional with it.
Be intentional. That's what you're optimizing for, right? And again, listen to your energy rhythms. As I said, your deeper sense of meaning, what lights you up, and see how that works with it. And just because a framework's hard or doesn't mean, you toss it away. Just that's why I encourage you to ask those questions. And if you answer those questions and that framework does align with what you're trying to optimize for and does honor your values and your energy rhythms and your sense of meaning, then it might be worth trying out. Yeah, if it helps you get closer to
Yeah, that brings up a good question. We talked about, I think in some broad strokes, does it work for you? Does it align? But what are some of the tactical, practical, this is working for me? So what should we be looking out for on that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that answer will change for, each person, but generally speaking, a strategy or framework is going to work for you when it brings you back to yourself, not just when it helps you get more done, helps you be more productive. It helps you feel a lot more grounded. When your decisions feel cleaner, when your nervous system begins to settle, your experience a sense of coherence between who you are and what you're doing. But then on the flip side of that, a strategy is not working when it feels like you're forcing it, or like when there's guilt or resistance or even a quiet shame for not doing it right. And that's the signal, right? And so Yeah, meditation's not going to work for everybody. Not everyone can close their eyes and sit still for 5, 10, 30 minutes. That's okay, right? So really just pay attention to your body and your energy. Are you feeling more grounded or are you feeling more fragmented? Those are some questions you might want to ask yourself too, just to make sure a strategy or framework's working for you.
Yeah.
And then AJ, one thing I do ask my clients though is I ask them, just to help them get a little bit more tactical about it, is I'll ask them, is this framework reinforcing connection to your values or reinforcing a survival pattern like perfectionism or people pleasing? And that can help give you your answer that you need. But you have that answer inside you that will work them up well. It's just asking those right questions and listening to yourself.
I can imagine the wrong framework can then become its own source of stress. Because now you begin to ask yourself, why isn't this working for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where
we don't have to go down that rabbit hole because it's it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard.
Okay. Just remember that the best strategies and frameworks out there are going to support you. Or becoming on your path on for yourself. That's kind of the key thing that I advise people of.
So we got some comments we'll read off as we're ending. So interesting about how you could experience bore-out and burnout at the same time. I didn't know that, definitely. And
you can.
I could see how that has come up in my life. Adding journaling sounds great. Trying to turn off at the end of the day. That reminds me of the the rituals you do to unwind, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe the journaling, like something you walk out of your office, whatever it is, you have a ritual. First step to presence is perspective and curiosity. Another one that we have here, take away some tools, tips, and models to practice immediately. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think we have some resources to give. And I want to let you know that after this, after we're done, we will put out a deck basically talking about the things that we talked about with some additional information. So look for a link for that in the comments of the event. And then we also have resources and Charlie, how to connect with you as well. So I'll pull up the resource screen and you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd say we're just past the hour, so I'll be real quick, and this will be sent out. But some books here I'm recommending, some talks and videos. And then if you're interested in depth coaching and this appeals to you, you can go to my website, coachcharlie.com. Click that button. It's the button at the top of the webpage is called Breakthrough Brilliance Call. Get some free coaching. And at the end of that free coaching session, if you feel like this might be for you, you can join a growing community of leaders and builders and big picture thinkers and creators. We communicate, we collaborate, and we support you on your journey. If you're not really quite sure if coaching's right for you yet, but you'd like to keep in touch, why don't you go ahead and just send me an email with one word, waitlist. You can send it at hello@coachcharlie.com. And then later this summer, I'll send you an update of our next cohort and some other sessions and workshops that we'll be doing that you can join. So you can keep in touch with the community that way. And they'll come out about 6 weeks. So at hello@coachcharlie.com, you just type in waitlist, or you can go to coachcharlie.com and book your free Breakthrough Brilliance call. And then again, we'll pass out AJ these books and talks and videos for folks to check out too. Some real helpful resources there. Well, I hope you find them helpful.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. I wanted to thank you for your time. I wanted to thank everybody for hopping on live, for all the people as you watch the recording. This has been a great deep dive. We're going to do more of these. Charlie, you have amazing experience, so I think that we can continue to pick your brain as much as you're willing to let us. What I will do is I will take us out so that the resources page will go full screen. We'll leave that up for a little bit so you guys can snapshot it and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone. I'm really grateful that you invested your evening with us tonight. Thank you so much. And I hope this was of value to you.